In this lesson, we'll work on attaching our tail rig to the pelvis. Remember, we'll be setting up a dynamic linking system, and this is mainly to drive the orientation of the tail and to give us control over that change. So what we'll do is create a group node directly above our main tail control, tail A, and tie the constraints to that, and then later on we can set up a custom parameter to regulate the constraint's weight. So with tail A selected, we'll go ahead and alt-right click and grab our group tool. Let's go ahead and rename the group to GRP CNS, since it will hold constraints, underscore tail A01. Okay, at this point, we can go ahead and open the group, store it in objects to hide, and then we'll want to quick align the pivot to the tail A helper. Okay, great. Now, as far as linking is concerned, we want this linked not to the pelvis or the center of gravity, but instead our global control. The reason why is, again, we want control over how the tail will be oriented, but we still want it to follow the entire rig. All right, so let's go ahead and head over to our schematic view. If we have one saved out, we can go ahead and work with that preset. And we can now go ahead and find our group and drag that over to the global control just to make this easier to link. There's the global control. So we'll go ahead and use our connect tool. Okay, great. So at this point, with the group still selected, we'll grab our animation controls and we'll go ahead and freeze our transforms. Okay, so everything is good to go. All right, so the next step is to create a helper that will act as an anchor point for our tail. And we'll want that helper directly linked to the PT-ENV helper object for the pelvis. So let's go ahead and head over to our create panel and we'll create a point helper. And let's go ahead and work with box cross, and we'll also keep the size at 20. So I'm just going to go ahead and work with these settings. With it selected, we'll add it to objects to hide, and we'll rename it to PT DRV tail anchor 01. At this point, we'll want it quick align to our tail A helper. Okay, great. Let's go ahead and now link it to the PT-ENV object. So link that right to the pelvis. All right, great. Well, at this point, we're ready to set up our constraints. So we're going to position an orientation constraint, our group, to this object here, our anchor point. Let's go ahead and grab the group. We'll go ahead and alt-right click and position constraint. Now, again, going back to our quad menu, we'll go ahead and apply an orientation constraint. And the only constraint we'll need to tie down is the orientation constraint, because we always want the tail attached to this point. So if we were to grab our pelvis control and start to rotate, you'll see that the entire tail will now follow. But now if we were to go to the group object, let's go to our rotation list. We'll find our orientation constraint, and we can set the weight to 0. When we start to move the pelvis, you'll notice that the orientation of the tail will not follow. Okay, so what we now need to do is set up a type of weight system to switch between two different spaces, between the tail being locked down by this helper or following the world. But we cannot just go ahead and tie the world into our weight list. We can't just go ahead and use this option here. The reason why is because our our global control is our character's world. So if we were to just go ahead and use this world space, the tail would not orient properly. It would be oriented to the scene's world space. So what we'll do is go ahead and stop the lesson here, and let's go ahead and finish up our dynamic linking system for the tail. And then at that point, our rig is basically done. We can go ahead and create a selection set, do a few more final checks, and then move right into skinning.